Um, well, still waiting for guests to join. Uh, Probably people are still having difficulties in understanding the whole YouTube live thing. But um, I don't know why there's an echo. I hope I'm not on the other channel as well. Yeah, no, there is a delay. Um, I mean, it would be great to have people come in and then interact on the subject matter, you know, because it's one thing when people see you posting content on your social platforms, yeah. But when you then start to and then they start asking you to, I see that we do have a guest, but I unfortunately cannot tell who it is. Okay, um, be that as it may. Let me just get on with it. Okay, welcome to this live session by Njeke Ranch that will cover the first livestock farming basics introduction to communal farming in KZN. Well, as you can hear, there is an echo, or there is a bit of a delay. Um, but yeah, I trust that my mic is still on for purposes of quality audio. Okay, so this is not necessarily my first video that I'm doing that I'm covering livestock farming, but in a sense where I cover my background. So if I may, I can I can just provide you guys with I can sorry, let me just lower the volume there so that we don't get a feedback in that regard. Okay, so guys, apologies for the delay. Welcome to the Njeke Ranch. Welcome to the Njeke Ranch live. First live on our YouTube channel. Um, the topic that we'll be covering today is livestock farming basics, and that's we will that basically covers your introduction to communal livestock farming in KZN, as I am a communal livestock farmer. And I'll get into detail as to what goes behind the communal livestock farmer, a narrative. Um, as I said in my previous intro, my name is Usiabonga Njeke from Njeke Ranch. And just to provide you a bit of background about myself, I am a third generation livestock farmer. I grew up in the northern parts of KZN in an area called Kwesakwamthethwa, outside of the Kwambonambi town. Um, I had basically a dual upbringing where during school terms I would be in Richards Bay attending John Ross College. And then during school holidays, I'll be back at home in the homestead at Gosakwamthethwa. Back then, it it wasn't called Njeke Ranch. I'll give you an explanation as to how the whole concept of Njeke Ranch came about. Now, growing up in a rural area, I would undertake tasks that were, of course, assigned to every young man within the homestead. That would be waking up in the morning, going to the plantations because you also farm with sugarcane as well, and of course, rearing livestock, being cattle, goats, sheep, and so forth. So yeah, so excuse me, it is kind of chilly. So yeah, so basically today I will be covering just the livestock farming basics and the introduction to livestock farming in KZN. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because I've received numerous requests from a number of people on my various social media platforms, asking for me to provide assistance and share my experiences, and of course guide with regards to as to how I started off livestock farming, because most of them know me as a town planner and not necessarily as a livestock farmer. So they were always shocked just to find out that I am also in the livestock industry. But yeah, so, guys, the purpose of this session basically is to educate viewers about communal livestock farming in KwaZulu Natal, as I have been getting, of course, numerous requests for training with of course the whole question around how can I go about starting a farm with minimal inputs, both financial or infrastructure wise. And that is within the rural context of KZN. Because if you are well versed with how KZN is like with regards to the history and so forth, I'll get into that as well. And of course, with the aspect of land availability and how can one go about getting land for livestock farming. So I will also touch on that as well. And yeah, so Felicity Anderson. Um, I do note your comment, and I will engage on that. Right now, colleagues, I'm I'm far too used to getting into virtual meetings with with the colleagues. So apologies if I used colleagues, but hey, we are in the farming industry, so I guess I can call you guys colleagues as well. Um, so, just to provide you a brief overview of what communal livestock farming consists of, just provide you a definition of what communal farming is and its significance in the KZN context. Communal livestock farming involves groups of farmers or your villages that are collaboratively managing livestock on shared land. Now, that is fostering cooperation and resource sharing within the context of KZN. And of course, it isn't a common trend. So we cannot generalize that particular aspect because in every community the practices are different. So in KwaZulu-Natal, this practice is significant for enhancing food security and, of course, generating income, preserving cultural practices and enhancing food security among local populations and supporting rural livelihoods. So now, for us as livestock farmers within the KZN province, specifically in the rural areas, because that's where mostly communal farming is practiced because of our historical context as well. Now, the historical context of communal farming in KZN is deeply rooted in the region's socio-economic and our cultural landscape, where one considers the historical imbalances that have, and of course, the injustices that have taken place within KZN, and of course, overall South Africa, considering, the pre-colonial era and of course the apartheid era as well. So it only makes sense for one to start there and start to paint you a picture as to how we got to where we are right now with regards to how we've come as a country. Um, so when one considers your pre-colonial era, that is before colonialism, where indigenous communities in KZN practiced communal farming as a means of subsistence and your social cohesion, where livestock such as your cattle were not only a source of food, but also a symbol of wealth and status within the community, where your communal resource use was not only based and managed only by a particular homestead, but it was a joint collaboration. Um, where we should also start to consider as well the colonial impact of that, where the arrival of the European settlers in the 19th century that disrupted your traditional farming practices, where land dispossession and the introduction of private property systems that basically marginalized our communal farming communities. And of course, one cannot forget where in history class we were taught about the Natives Land Act of 1913, where further restrictions to land access for Black communities that led to a decline in traditional farming practices. Now, when one places this in the context of KZN, in the context of your Ingonyama Trust, 2017, from 2016 to 2017, I did research with regards to land that is available for the communities that are within the previously known as your Bantustan areas or your reservations, um, where Black people were removed from their and one should outrightly say they were dispossessed from their land of their forefathers, and they were uprooted and dumped in areas where they were not able to sustain themselves, because where they were uprooted from, they were sustaining themselves through subsistence farming, or should I say through communal farming practices, and they were dumped in areas that were not necessarily, I would say, farmable, um, where one really now starts to dwell into the research that I undertook, where one considers where land that is under Ingonyama Trust, that is about 25,000 square kilometers of that land is under Ingonyama Trust. That's where the Black communities are residing. And that's where mostly of the land parcels that are managed by the traditional councils. Um, and and it's unfortunate that most of those land parcels are really in a condition where the communities cannot farm off or make a living out of. So when they were dumped there, they were then required to make a living out of that particular land that they were placed on. And when one starts to consider your post apartheid era, after the ending of apartheid in the 1990s, there was a renewed interest in communal farming as a means of restoring cultural practices and, of course, improving food security, where government initiatives aimed at supporting communal farming have since emerged, recognizing its potential for economic development and, of course, the poverty alleviation. But one should not leave out the cultural heritage aspect of livestock, where livestock farming is intertwined with our cultural practices and traditions of the Zulu people and other ethnic groups in KZN, where rituals, ceremonies, and our social events often revolve around livestock, highlighting their significance in cultural basically expressions. So when one further considers our sustainable practices within the farming realm, where communal farming often incorporates traditional ecological knowledge, promoting sustainable land use and biodiversity conservation, where practices such as rotational grazing and mixed farming can enhance soil health and ecosystem resilience. Now, these are just some of the the reflections that I touch on when one starts to bring about the topic of how can I get into farming, especially when one considers that one, they do not have the necessary financial inputs to buy land, and two, the necessary implements to work that land. So it's always best that we revisit where we come from, as not only as South Africa, but of course as KZN, but as the people as well, to basically understand as to what has brought about this particular sense of dispossession from and disconnection from the land, and what can one really now start to consider. Because also when one ventures into getting to trying to find arable farming land, one will understand that it is very expensive. For a and I stand to be corrected on this, but I've often, in my search for a farm, for a measly 1 hectare or 3 hectare small holding, one could be looking at paying roughly about 1.5 million, or if not more. So, and we all know that for you to basically be sustainable, or to basically start to make a profit out of that land, especially when it comes to livestock farming, you should consider land that is more than 1 hectare, because when one does the ratios, you should be looking at having one cow and calf per hectare. So basically, 1 hectare can support a cow and calf, depending on the type of operation that you farming operation that you're getting into. And there are numerous of farming operations, but I will touch on the ones that we as the Njeke Ranch have ventured into. And um, the that also involves the practices of cow and calf, because we do practice that as well. We do have a breeding herd, and we also do raise milk bottle. We do raise bottle fed calves as well. But your cow and calf operation, that's when you have cows that you breed, and of course, once bred, they will give birth to calves. Then you raise those calves up to a year, and then you look at selling off those calves. So that is a cow and calf operation. So to also touch on the aspect of as to how can one then gain access to land if land is expensive, especially farming land, where one can start to venture into making contact with your nearest inkosi, and of course engaging with the induna as well, with regards to undertaking a process of ukukhonza. Ukukhonza is a process that is practiced within your traditional authority areas within KwaZulu-Natal, where you approach the local headsman okanye induna, and you indicate that you would like to be placed within a particular area. Is there land available for you? And if there is land available, then you can indicate to the respective induna with regards to the use that you'll want to undertake within that particular property. So there are other nitty-gritties that are involved in that with regards to your land uses and so forth and so forth. I will not dwell much into that particular process, but I'm just giving you guys a brief overview as to how to go about doing it. So if you want more information, you can engage me as well on the channel through your comments and so forth. Even on our TikTok channel as well, Njeke Ranch. We're also available there. So once you've got the land from the Induna, it's also important for you to get to understand as to what grass species are available within your area that you are planning on farming in. So the reason why I'm saying that is because people have this misconception that just because there's a field of lush grass, therefore they can start farming or rearing livestock and they will be successful at it. Guys, some of that grass species are not, palatable for livestock. And some of them can do damage to your livestock. So it's always good to get an understanding as to what type of grass species are available within your area. I know that in a northern KZN area where we farm, it is the sauerveld that is mostly available. And it is palatable for the livestock to a certain extent, but we often have to supplement during winter. And as you would also see from our other videos within the channel, where we talk about the importance of supplementing your livestock during the winter season as your veld gets dry. So we also have ways of cutting costs through that by utilizing our sugarcane tops, because you also farm with sugarcane. So during the sugarcane harvesting season, we also collect those sugarcane tops, and instead of largely feeding hay bales to our livestock during the winter period, we also provide them a high energy forage through the sugarcane tops. So that is one of the ways of also ensuring that your livestock conditions in terms of their health is also at peak as well, because as well your livestock cannot get into the breeding season if their body condition or is not in a particular state where they can be bred. So it's also important to ensure that your body condition as well of your livestock is, you place that as a point of high importance. Now, so I've covered as to how you can go about getting land within a rural area, just briefly. And then also the importance of getting to understand the grass species that are available within your area. Now, the thing is, beyond getting to understand the grass species or the fells that is available in your area, what's also important to understand is the type of breed that you would be getting into. Because I've seen a lot of farmers making a mistake of just buying livestock but not necessarily understanding the type of breed that you're getting into. I've been raised in a homestead where we largely kept the Nguni breed and the Brahman breed. And perhaps over the next videos, I will get to talk to why I chose to go with the Nguni instead of the Brahman as my preferred choice of farming. Because I farm with Nguni and Boran, and behind that I've also done research that has led to my crossbreeding strategy between the Nguni and the Boran. So, and guys, I cannot stress any further the importance of you doing your research before you get into livestock farming or before you get into any farming practice that is. So it's always important to undertake your research and be truthful to yourself as well once you've undertaken that research, because you can lose a lot of money in farming. Because there would be kinks in your research and stuff like that. So it's always important to undertake that research. So so getting to understand the type of breed that you want to get into. The reason why I say that is because not every breed can be sustained within a particular area with regards to your topography and, of course, your climate conditions as well. For an example, your mostly European originated breeds, such as your now I'm talking about the meat breeds, such as your Angus, your your Herefords, your Simmentalas. They are they mostly thrive in your cold condition areas, such as the KZN Midlands, where temperatures can drop to a minus. And those type of breeds, they thrive in those areas because of also the type of grass that is available as well. But when you place them within areas such as your northern KZN, they will experience difficulties. And I've learned this the hard way, where I've had a couple of Angus and some of your milk cross breeds, such as your Holstein. Much to my surprise, the milk breeds, such as your Jersey, they can you know survive within the area that we farm in. But I keep jerseys for basically raising your for raising the bottle fed calves, just as ways of cutting costs in the production. So with regards to the keeping your meat breeds, you really do not want to keep meat breeds such as your Angus, your Herefords, your Simmentalas, and if you are rearing for milk purposes, you definitely do not want to keep your Holsteins within your northern region because of we are in a hot water, a tick-borne disease area. So and apart from that, Holsteins cannot tolerate heat. And within your northern region in KZN, it gets pretty hot. So there is that particular challenge when it comes to your Holstein breed, because they're mostly used for dairy purposes. So the reason why that is so that I got into breeding Nguni and your Boran is because with Nguni it is of course an indigenous African breed, such as your Boran as well. But your Nguni has characteristics or traits of being a motherly breed, such as well as the Boran. Hence why it's called the God's gift to cattlemen, because the Boran, when it comes to motherly instinct, for me personally, it ticks all boxes, you know. And of course, there is the packing size of the Boran. Hence, I've decided to go with the whole Boran breed with regards to crossbreeding. The reason why I crossbreed the Boran with the Nguni, one, the Nguni, when it comes to disease resistant, they can. I mean, they do have the trait of being hardy as well, so they can resist some tick-borne diseases, and the Boran as well. But what the Nguni lacks over the Boran is, of course, your size and your structure aspect. Because when you consider the Boran, sorry, when you consider the Nguni, it is much smaller in frame, and of course much smaller in your width as well, and of course much smaller in your girth as well. But when you look at the Boran, it is bigger than your Nguni. It is also disease resistant to a certain extent, of course dependent on your herd management routines as well, and of course it is also a breed that can produce a significant amount of milk for its calf. And also, it is also bigger than Yonguni. The reason why I emphasize on size, especially on the breed, is because, again, I will go back to always understanding as to why you started and who is your target market. Who are you farming for? Are you farming for your local community customer, or are you farming for the feedlot? Now, the feedlots tend to not um, accept your 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 stud breeds, such as, or should I say, your straight breeds, such as your Brahman, your Boran. In they mostly factor in if that particular specimen has been crossbred. So it's always a good practice something that I've also learned over the years, to always crossbreed. So I've gone via the whole crossbreeding route, crossbreeding your Boran and your Ingun. So yeah, so one has actually learned a lot from actually doing that. So, and the experience that one has gained has, of course, over the years, taught one as to what can one do and what cannot do. So, I mean, just last year alone, as I've said as well, that there are certain breeds that you should stay away from, especially if you're farming in the northern region. Just last year alone, I lost about 12 cows. There were, of course, some environmental aspects into it, but parts of it as well I can attribute to the breeds that those particular animals were at. So, one of them was a Sembra. She was pregnant, and she had a down cow, and yeah, one problem just led to the next, until she died. Um, as I said, she was bred, so which means that she was due to calve in about 4 weeks or so. So that was hard to accept, But thereafter, another one died as well, and then another one gave birth to a stillborn calf, um, and another one gave birth, and she started nursing her calf for about 2 weeks. Thereafter, she died. But the calf is still alive, and he's doing very well, because we decided to nurse him as well alongside another Holstein cow, who was a first time um, uh, a mom. So she was at first hesitant, and she didn't want to nurse that calf, but we managed to get her to basically nurse that calf. And of course, the yeah, we also lost one. We also lost another one as well, that had a breached birth, where the calf was facing in an odd direction. And because I'm not always on the farm, so my father is the one who oversees to all of the operation, and they did experience difficulties in assisting her in giving birth to that calf, to a point where the calf died, and they tried to get the calf out even after it had died, and yeah, it got to a point where even the cow itself died, over a space of 4 days. So she just kept lying there, and we tried to nurse her back, but unfortunately we couldn't. So yeah, so that led to that particular problem. But as I've said, you are going to lose a lot in farming if, as well, you are not um, mentally prepared for the journey of farming, because you must always tell yourselves that it can go either way. It can go, it can be great or it can be bad. So always be in a position where you can be resilient enough to withstand the negative impacts, the kicks and the hits that you would get from it, because some of the things are beyond your control, such as the environment, your drought. You cannot determine as to how long will the dry spell be, so you should always prepare in advance. And at times you cannot necessarily prepare, because you will get hit, well, dependent on your area. Like for us, we get hit with terrestrial floods every now and then, where the river at the bottom of the valley just floods after, about 100 mils of rain overnight, or within a space of 3 hours. So where we have also lost last year, a significant length of fence line, where one had to replace that, because that particular fence line fenced the paddocks where the livestock graze in during the course of the day. So it's a type of infrastructure as well that you should have on your farm, of which in the coming lives I will cover those as well. So it that also in its sense as well starts to look at the sustainable practices that we undertake within the Njeke Ranch homestead. So yeah, as I've said, one of our farming practices that we delve in is, of course, the cow and calf operation, where we have a herd of cows that are bred to a bull. And by the way, guys, the ratio that you should always have in mind is that you must always keep one bull to a herd of 25 cows. One bull per 25 cows, which means that bull must breed all of those 25 cows or heifers. And after 9 months, you must get a calf out of that cow or heifer. If a cow and heifer does, or if a cow or a heifer does not give you a calf in a year, or if she has not given you a calf in 2 years, please consider selling her, because you cannot keep a cow or a heifer in your kraal that cannot produce for you, because you are putting in finances in keeping her, maintaining her, your the medicine that you administer to her, you're dipping as well. Those are costs that are associated with the herd maintenance. So if a cow does not produce a calf for you to sell off, consider selling that cow or heifer, either for butchering or for for a feedlot, which will eventually be butchered. So yeah, and then, of course, as I mentioned in my other videos, roughly the land that we do have is close to about 25 hectares. So within that particular land parcel, we have divided it into sugarcane plantations, as I've mentioned before, that one of our feeds that we tap into, that we grow on the ranch, is the sugarcane, which of course goes to the which goes to the sugarcane mill. But what's left behind is your sugarcane tops. So we utilize that to supplement our livestock during winter, as they are hardly hit because of the dry conditions. That of course leads to drying up of the pastures. So large part of the ranch consists of sugarcane plantations, and about 9 hectares of it is the grazing paddocks. Now, roughly nine is the grazing paddock, the main grazing paddocks. We've recently cleared another 1.5 hectares of land that we are going to be using to rear goats and your sheep as well. So, and of course the weaners as they get into maturing stage before we put them into the feedlot. So for us, that is what we always advocate for, getting to understand the type of breeds that can thrive within your area. So one understood that the Nguni will always thrive. And of course, your indigenous African breed, such as your Boran, will always thrive. So anything that is not common within the area that you are residing in, please stay away from acquiring that breed of cattle, because you will experience difficulties. Now, also a breed that thrives in our region as well is, of course, the Brahman. I know that some farmers have also tried farming with your Beef Master and your Bonsmara as well. Now, your Bonsmara can also be an advantage within an area because they are also indigenously African, because they were, I will get into the history of the respective breeds in another video, but the Bonsmara, they originate from previously Rhodesia, now modern day Zimbabwe. So yeah, so as you can tell, the conditions within Zimbabwe as well are no different from the ones that we experience within northern parts of KZN. So with regards to being tick tick-borne disease resistant to a certain extent, and of course your other diseases as well. Your bonsmara also thrives in those type of conditions. So yeah, so once you've had a look at that and understood the type of breed that you can get into, what's also important for you to understand is the type of infrastructure that you need. Now, within our channel, you'll probably see as we are working the livestock, there's a particular facility there at the end of our cattle crush. As currently, we're also undertaking a refurbishment of our infrastructure on the ranch. But one of the most pivotal infrastructure that we have on the ranch, it was a major game changer, is the scale, is the cattle scale. So yeah, so the reason why we got that was for us to wean, or basically to weigh our winners before putting them into a feedlot and before putting them into the backgrounding practice. I will cover in another video as to what is backgrounding of your livestock, because it is part of your more sustainable practices when it comes to modern farming. So once you've undertaken the understanding of the type of infrastructure that you need, but mostly guys, primarily you will need your fencing, you will need your gates as well for security purposes. And then yeah, and then of course you will need your cattle crush and your kraal, and you'll of course need your water trough and your feeding troughs. Now, some of these things like your water trough and your feeding troughs, you can make them yourself utilizing the materials that you find around your space. For us, we've got also gum tree plantations or eucalyptus trees, but we call them that side your gum trees. So we harvest those if we are not sending them to the mill. We harvest those and we dry them up and we treat them on site to basically use them as our fencing posts. So the importance of having your own resources on your ranch or on your farm, you will realize that you will cut cost considerably when it comes to your inputs. Because the reason why we decided to go the whole route of treating our own timber is basically that, is to save costs within our production process. So we do treat those on site as well. So you will need a fencing material as well to ensure that your livestock is secured. So yeah, so, and of course, also need to understand the type of medication that is required during the change of every season, because right now we are getting into winter. So your vaccination regimen, your dipping regimen also needs to change as well. And of course, having a dip within your community or within your communal area is very important as well. If you do not have your own dipping facility on site on your ranch, um, it is very important to find out where is your nearest dipping facility, and of course as to how is that particular dipping facility managed. Now in our area, we've recently been assisted by having a dipping facility constructed for the community, and the management of that particular facility is run by the men in in the communal space, where in our case, our father is the one that is the chairperson of that particular dipping facility. So he manages, of course, the sugarcane aspect of it, and he also manages, or should I say, he assists the community in managing the dipping facility, keeping dipping periods, and of course ensuring that the maintenance of the facility itself is up to standard. That being the collection of the dipping chemical, as well, and of course the the ensuring that every homestead has paid their fees to ensure that their cattle is, of course, considered during the dipping period. Now, we dip every Sundays, but I say this, in a sense that in summer, the dipping regimen is different. We dip and we skip a weekend. So if tomorrow is Sunday, we will be dipping tomorrow. Um, and tomorrow, after dipping, we will then skip about a week or two, depending on the condition of the cattle, and also monitoring the ticks and of course the larvae of those ticks as to how they are on the cattle. So now with that, with regards to the whole communal space, every homestead that has signed up on the dipping facility will get a dipping token or a pamphlet where every time when they bring their livestock to the dipping facility, they will be ticked off, and they pay a fee of 40 rand. The 40 rand goes towards the maintenance of the dipping facility, even though it was funded by government, but the maintenance of it stays with the respective community for which it was provided for. And of course, one has also been instrumental in advising the abanumzane or the men within the community as to how to go about managing that particular dipping facility. And of course, proposing certain interventions, such as utilizing those funds to purchase new fence lines, specifically for the areas that are around the dipping facility, so as to make the rounding up of the livestock easier as well for them to get into the dipping facility. Because cattle can, when they feel pressed against a particular obstacle, they can also injure themselves, injure their handlers as well, and of course, damage the infrastructure. So one should always work towards ensuring that you've got good cattle handling facility. So that is just one of the aspects that one can consider as well. So, guys, so I've just briefly touched on some of how communal farming, or some of the concepts that are around communal farming and how you can go about getting into communal farming. So I've touched on the breeds, I've touched on the infrastructure that you need. Sometimes even if you do not necessarily have that infrastructure, but consider what type of infrastructure is available within your community. I've also touched on some of the yes, the breed that you can get into, which is mostly important, and of course the type of farming operation that you're getting into. Now, one may think that getting into farming, yes, you do require a lot of finances to get into, but there are other ways of getting into it without having to break the bank. In a sense that you can purchase bottle-fed calves that cost roughly about 800 rand, sometimes 350, depending on the breed. Now, your Holsteins, they can go for your 350, your jerseys for about 250, but there are risks associated with that as well. Of course, buying your milk replacer, you should also factor that in as well. And of course, understanding as to when you should feed them and how much you should feed them, when you should vaccinate, and the type of feed that you should provide for them as well. I will get into that as well at a later stage, because that's one other part of our farming operation, raising bottle-fed calves for purposes of selling into the feedlot, or of course selling to the local customer as well. So that is also one of our practices. But yeah, um, given that we have touched on those particular aspects, of which I've also noticed in some of our social media platforms are largely asked type of questions. So yeah, so if there aren't any other questions that you would like to find out as to how to go about getting into livestock farming within a communal area, um, for me, I feel that I have covered almost most or almost the points, if not all the points that I have jotted down just to basically structure the today's live session. If you feel that there's something that I might have left out that you might want to get a thorough understanding on, please do engage. Um, oh, by the way, I'm also live on the TikTok channel as well. So yeah, because initially this session was planned to last for 30 minutes. So I feel that I've covered more than what I had planned to cover during the session. So yeah, so one can consider exiting the session. But however, I do thank you for joining. Um, Felicity Anderson, you look like you jump. I know the breath. What is? I don't know what you were getting into, Felicity Anderson, but okay. Maybe I missed a joke there, but yeah, sure. Um, yeah, for those that joined, thank you very much for joining. Please do subscribe and like the channel. And please leave your comments in the respective videos that have been posted. Thank you very much for joining. Much appreciated.